So I will talk about the future of proton therapy in an integrated frame of radiation oncology. And we had already a lot of talks about the clinical value, how it integrates and the importance of the integration in a radiotherapy department. And so over the years, although it started like in 1954, the first treatment of proton therapy, today proton therapy is a real treatment modality, a full-blown treatment modality for patients integrated in their cancer care pathway, I would say. And it's thanks to, on one side, what we heard a lot about already today, it's proven clinical benefits, but also that the system itself evolves so it can be integrated in a conventional radiation therapy department. And also it's not the end, kind of. There is still a lot of future innovation that will bring additional value still to patients that will be treated with proton therapy. So I will go over a bit those three different items. So we heard a lot about the Bragg peak already today. So we all know now that the particularities are that at the entrance of the patient you have less dose, and after the tumor, the highest dose is within the tumor, and after the Bragg peak there is no dose anymore. So it really creates the opportunity to have a highly conformal dose to the tumor and spare the healthy tissues around it. Next to that, it's not only about that Bragg peak, it's also how you deliver that Bragg peak to the patient. So today, the state-of-the-art delivery technique is what we call pencil beam scanning. So it means that you deliver the dose energy layer per energy layer, and within each energy layer, you can change also the intensity of the spots that you paint. So you really paint with those the tumor. So also in there, it's very much important how those spots are placed, what are the characteristics of the spots, to make sure that you have the highest possible conformality to the tumor and to take as much as you can advantage of that Bragg peak. So we all have heard that there's high quality pencil beam scanning offers the potential to reduce the side effects for the patients, or on the contrary, for tumors that really require high doses, to escalate the dose to the tumor. And here it's a nice example, comparison photons and protons for nasopharyngeal cancer, where you see so first on the left, it's a photon dose, the middle is a proton dose, and then you have the delta between the photon and the proton dose, and you see up to 25 gray of difference in there. So that's an example. There are a lot more examples to that. We have seen that in the presentation of Dr. Metz. And also with the coming of pencil beam scanning and IMPT, which is kind of the equivalent of IMRT in photons, a lot more indications have been proven to benefit from proton therapy as opposed to what in the earlier techniques with scattering. So, and that means that those maturing of the beam delivery techniques also, as I said, a highly diverse patient mix can benefit from it. And also you see that in what current centers are treating. So here you have like 4 centers and their case mix. So you see on one side, that is a high variety of indications that they treat. So on the left side, you see how the different indications and then the percentage of their case mix. But also it gives also the flexibility also to adapt the case mix to the different centers' needs somehow. Some centers have work very closely with a pediatric facility, so they have a huge amount of pediatric patients. Others have more real radiation patients. So there is also a large flexibility in the treatment that you can deliver with it. So, and up to today, almost 300 patients have been treated with proton therapy. So there is out there quite a lot of expertise having built up around proton therapy. And so if you start with proton therapy in your facility, there is a huge community out there that can support also you and that in general is very willing to share their expertise. So next to the fact that there is a lot of indications that been treated with proton therapy, there is also, with the increase of the number of patients that are treated, also a lot of scientific work ongoing to also factualize the benefit of proton therapy for the different indications, and also learn about which are the exact population that can benefit the most. We all know that it's a pretty expensive treatment, so we want to have them as a tool in the arsenal of the different methods to treat those patients. And so we want to also to know which are the patients that benefit the most. So this is a graph showing the ongoing clinical studies, randomized clinical studies that compare photons to protons, and when they will have their initial results somehow. So we know there was highlights of the initial results of the Andy Anderson trial on oropharyngeal cancer. There are other trials upcoming that will inform us where the real and the best value is for which kind of patient. So there is a real momentum as well in the community with the growing number of centers, also with the growing number of studies and results that will come out. So on one side, we talked about the clinical benefit of it. To have it as an integrated modality in your radiotherapy department, there is a lot more needed than only the beam. It's the essence. Without there, you have not a modality, but to have it integrated in your department, there is other things to take most advantage of proton therapy. There are other things that are important as well to make it viable in your radiotherapy department. On one side, it's if you have a very precise delivery, also the imaging in the room is very much important. So you need a comprehensive imaging solution as you are used to have in the LINAC world, I would say. Also, you want those patients not to be too long on the table. So you need a smart workflow. You need to have the kind of steps, only the necessary steps to proceed to treat those patients. And also, if you have it integrated in an existing radiotherapy department, it means also that also the environments have to match with each other, have the right connectivity to exchange plans, to exchange patient charts, those kind of things. So if you look at the workflow, you have seen already a few images of the different one-room systems. Generally, they have a very open environment, which eases the patient setup, but also is very important for the patient himself to not be kind of in a tunnel and to be very kind of claustrophobic environment. Also for like pediatric patients, that you can go around the patient, make them feel at ease. It's very much important. Also, having the flexibility as you have in conventional radiation therapy to move the equipment inside and outside the treatment room are the things that kind of are essential to have an efficient throughput and are kind of available on the different systems out there. I was also talking about the imaging part. Here you see on the Proteus one, you have an oblique system for KV imaging. So it's available at any time. So it means that if you do non-coplanar beams, a bit of exotic setups, you have the imaging available with a 6 degree of freedom correction, which contributes, of course, to the precise positioning of the patient for a precise delivery. And on the other hand, also a cone beam CT to visualize the soft tissue. That's an onboard imaging on the rat. Next to what's happening into the treatment room, as I said, it's also important to have the connection with the rest of the department. So currently, treatment planning and OIS systems are very well connected to proton therapy. So systems, so the different main vendors you're used to see for radiation therapy, Linux, are also compatible and have functionality to do the treatment planning for proton therapy in a very good manner. So, and to give you a kind of flavor of how much does it take or how long does it take to treat a patient on proton therapy, and to have the kind of benchmark of what you're used to see in radiation therapy. Here it's from one of our customers in Willis-Knighton in the US. You see there is quite a variety, of course, if you treat pediatrics and a complete craniospinal case that can go up to 45 minutes, 50, maybe an hour sometimes. However, there are a lot of other cases which are kind of very similar to what you're used to in conventional radiation therapy, going from 12, 15 minutes to up to 20 minutes. So it's very much also in there that it also make it feasible for existing radiation therapy departments to extend their department with proton therapy, with all those additional functionality be there. Of course, it's still an evolving environment or an evolving treatment, I would say. We have certainly heard Dr. Metz earlier talking about flash therapy. So I will only be brief about that, but I want to highlight two main ones. I think that will have a great impact on how proton therapy will be delivered in the future. On one side, there is dynamic arc and conformal flash. That's for sure the ones that are are ongoing and also will influence how we treat tomorrow. So what is dynamic arc? So it's quite similar of what you know from radiation therapy, what's called VMAT or rapid arc. So it means that the treatment is delivered during the gantry rotation and the patient positioner remains fixed. So it gets a variable gantry speed to allow the delivery of larger number of spots and a shorter angle span, and to optimize the delivery time. However, per angle, you only have one energy. So that's the main kind of difference between IMRT or VMAT, I would say, and dynamic arc, is that you have to take into account also that you, next to the intensity of the spots of the MLC, you need also to take into account the energy that you deliver. So here is a little bit of comparison between VMAT rapid arc and dynamic arc. So on both sides, you have variable gantry angles while you irradiate. In photons, you have the MLC speed that is mechanically constrained and makes the influences kind of the gantry speed that you have to follow, while the intensity modulation in protons is done by the intensity of the different spot that you paint by layer. So you have a variable dose rate per field. That's the same way on both sides. And as I said, the main difference is the variable energy that you have to take into account. It also makes that, although in general for VMAT, you have to be more or less the 360 degrees, or often you need to use the 360 degrees angles. With the fact that you have that Bragg peak, you only have a certain smaller angle in general to overcome. So it brings additional flexibility and also creates the potential of having faster delivery, which is important for your throughput, and so also for the number of patients that you can treat in a day. So it's not in clinical use yet. However, a lot of work has been done by different centers to evaluate where there can be a benefit beyond only maybe just be faster. Also, how can we even be more conformal to the target? So there has been some studies, in silico studies on brain and head and neck, where in effect they can show that the dose to the organs at risk can even be further reduced by the flexibility you have to do the treatment. For breast, for example, there are huge fields that you have to do, so you can probably simplify the workflow and enlarge artificially through the arc therapy the field size. There is some interplay effect that you probably can mitigate by thoracic patients. And also you can have more an influence on what we call the linear energy transfer. So it's kind of the LET or the higher. We generally take 1.1 as RBE, but we know that in the end of range, we have a higher biological dose. So, and we have to take care of that if we do treatment planning. So it means that if you can bring that higher radiobiology dose, not at the border of an organ at risk, but within the tumor, it's a kind of mitigating the risk and maybe even increase the efficacy of the treatment. So it's an additional tool to also start playing with this knowledge and to kind of reduce the risk of which is associated with that uncertainty. So, in fact, what can ARC offer for the treatment? On one side, to be more conformal, having a lower integral dose and a better conformality, being faster, like you see in VMAT, and so having higher throughput, and also simpler in the sense that you don't have to play yourself anymore with the gantry angles and little tweaks here and there to kind of determine the optimal gantry angles. So that's an example of one of our customers who did some in silico study for a head and neck case. What you see at the left side is a VMAT. In the middle is IMPT, the current technique they're using. And then on the right, you see the ARC protons, with where you see there is a reduction in dose to the brainstem and some other structures in the brain. So what they did as a study, so they have a protocol in their facility where only patients that show enough dose reduction or associated with that a reduction in normal tissue complication probability, they go to protons. If the plans are similar, the patient go to photons. So they don't work per indication, they really work on patient basis. So they have a very much a large population already of oropharyngeal cases. And so they had, in those comparison plans, they had a few patients that couldn't qualify for proton therapy, or for which it was not beneficial enough to put them into protons. And so they took all those bunch of patients, and so they replanned them with dynamic arc. So they could, and a lot of them qualified, in fact, for protons through the fact that they could use dynamic arc, showing really that there is a potential to even have more conformal doses with dynamic arc and with protons when using rotational therapy. So they have a relative increase of 22% of patients that would qualify in this way to proton therapy. Also, in terms that you get away probably in a lot of cases with only one arc instead of 3, 4, 5 beams sometimes, it also reduces the time you need for the patient into the treatment room. So one of our contributors, they kind of took their list of patients for the day, and instead of doing them in IMPT, they planned them in dynamic arc, and they kind of artificially calculated how much time it would take, not for the whole session, but for the time after the setup up to the end of the treatment. So it includes, for the IMPT, the delivery of the beam, the gantry angle between the beams, and up to the end. And then they could see that those times are reduced by 58%. It remains a calculation, but at least it shows that it's also contributing to the throughput. So it means that you could, if all patients would be in dynamic arc, you could go up to 30% of additional patients. Obviously, like with VMAT, not all of your patients will be in dynamic arc treated in the future. So this development is not done only by the manufacturers. There is a lot of also contribution of the community. Here is the consortium that we have on IBA side. Also at the Astro level, there are working groups also working on guidelines and on QA guidelines and things like that for this new modality. So it's a really great collaboration between the community and IBA and the manufacturers in general. So the other part is certainly conformal flash, and I will not go really into details because Jim already talked a lot about it. We are really grateful and really excited about the collaboration we have together on the topic, because it's really kind of a next step into also using the radiobiology into the treatment. So it's really a new field where there's a lot to develop, and both on the technology side and a lot to discover on the clinical side. So you heard what flash was, or what it flash is. You need to deliver the dose at a very high dose rate, probably also have a minimum dose before seeing the flash effect. The flash effect is a protective effect for the organs at risk, and keeping the tumor control possibility of the radiation. So kind of opening the therapeutic window of the treatment. A lot of work has been done on the different animal studies and the different tissues to kind of characterize at least the flash effect. And I will go. Also, it requires, as was said, protons is probably the easiest way to get there, because it can be achieved through the existing technology with some modifications. If you look at electron machines and you want to have a technique for deep-seated tumors, you really need to develop a complete new system. Also on the photon side, currently NEC cannot go to the dose rates that are necessary to create the flash effect. So on the proton technology, of course, you need to tune the beam and to be able to increase the beam current, and how you modulate the beam that requires modifications. Also in the efficiency to transmit the beam in the beam line, some modifications are needed to really kind of optimize or reduce as much as possible the beam losses along the way. And also, of course, if you have a higher dose rate, the monitoring of the dose is very critical and requires a high response time to realize that. Of course, also, not only on the equipment side, but also on the treatment planning side, we need to take into account now also not only the dose, but also the dose rate. So it also requires changes at the treatment planning side to also be able to optimize that. And next to the equipment itself, you have seen also in the slides of Jim that to be conformal to the tumor, we use an accessory, we call it a snout, that has two main kind of influences on the beam. We want to have a dose that's conformal to the backside of the tumor, which we use a hedgehog, that we call it, and also you want to be conformal on the lateral sides, and therefore we use an aperture. Why don't we use traditional pencil beam scanning? It's not fast enough. If you have to switch layer to layer, you cannot do it in 1 second to cover the complete tumor. So that's the easiest way to kind of get the experience with proton therapy and flash. So, and the idea also is it's not that the flash effect will compensate non-conformity of the dose. So you have first the conformity of the dose and the add-on of the flash effect. So So you need also to have a conformal dose and not lose kind of the advantage that proton therapy has in that respect. So it's a dose comparison between conventional IMPT, conformal flash, and a VMAT plan in the current setting. So I will not go over the flash effect in mice. I think Jim has extensively talked about that, but at least in moving forward, it's not that we can just go to clinical treatment, not from a vendor and a regulatory perspective, but also not from an ethical perspective. So there are a very rigorous process both on the technology side and also on the clinical side to move forward, moving from mice to then the dogs that you have seen, and then in the end, which we are preparing together now, is to go to the first patient in conformal flash, the irradiation of head and neck cancer. Also in a very good collaboration with the FDA, and see how we can do that in a safe way that we protect also what's going on elsewhere in proton therapy. So as a conclusion, a bit what I started with. So today, proton therapy is a really full-blown treatment modality integrated in the cancer care part, thanks to the fact it has proven clinical benefits. It's well integrated into the radiotherapy department, and there is a lot of momentum both in the different areas at different regions, I think, over the world, that with the increase of number of centers out there, there is a lot of new insights gained on all those different levels. So thank you very much.